We have precious little Grand Banks content on the channel, but I want to change that here at Dusseldorf because Grand Banks has been through a bit of a change of late. If you think of these as displacement trawler yachts, well, those days are gone. These are now focused, high-speed cruising machines with that traditional look, but lots of very clever modern technology under the skin. So I want to take you through all of that as we get on with this full tour of the Grand Banks GB54. I'm Jack Haines, welcome to YachtBuyer. Starting here at the stern, you can't help but notice this lovely teak transom, apart from one thing. It's not teak at all, it is in fact painted carbon, but it's so convincing you'd barely believe that it isn't the real thing. And the whole idea behind that, as is the case with a lot of this boat, is easy maintenance. Yes, it would be lovely if it was real wood, but it takes a hell of a lot of care and maintenance. So they're trying to remove that, but keep that lovely traditional look. And I've got to say, the effect really is rather amazing. Got a fixed bathing platform on this particular boat, but if you wanted a transformer to launch toys with, you can do that. The tender on this boat is on the Flybridge, as we will see later on in the tour. But let's step on board through this boarding gate, up into the cockpit. And this is a great space. It's very welcoming, it's very inviting, it's very well protected as well. You have a really nice big overhang. I mentioned the tender lives up there, hence why it's so big, but it means down here it's really nice and protected. You've got a traditional bench here running across the back of the transom, but plenty of space either side and in front of the table if you want more people to gather around. And this is real wood, varnished real wood, absolutely beautiful. Anything that's not exposed to the elements is real wood. Everything else is designed to resist those elements and be very easy to look after. You're never too far away from fridges. We have a couple over here. We have an ice maker down here, and obviously your sink as well, so you can wash your hands. If you've got a bit of fish on board, you can do your prep up here away from the inside of the boat. I'm going to step inside in a moment, of course, but for now I think we'll carry on and head to the foredeck. It's a very easy boat to move around on. It feels really nice and safe to move forward on the GB54. And here you see we've got boarding gates on both sides. So if you're alongside a quayside, you can disembark from here rather than having to go down to the bathing platform. And I talked about the ease of maintenance. Well, back in the day, these cappings would all have been wood. And again, hard to look after. This, not anymore, painted surface. So again, just much more resistant to the weather. If we carry on forward, there are a couple of shallow steps just to get you up to the foredeck level. But then once you're past here, there are no more steps at all. So once you're up in this area, doing the crewing or going up to use the anchor, you're not having to negotiate any level changes at all. And actually the space right forward, where you're going to be standing if you're using the anchor or handling the lines, is really, really good. I just love this boat from this angle. I think it looks really imposing, that classic Grand Banks look, but with a modern twist. Let's head to the Flybridge. Up to the top deck then, all very safe and easy. That's a nice shallow staircase and lots to grab onto when you're on the way up. Now, it's a flexible design on the GB54. There are lots of areas where you can make your mark and tweak things, and the Flybridge is absolutely one of those. So if you didn't want this wet bar here, you can have a sofa there instead, for example. Again, if you want a bit more seating back here, if you don't want the tender there, you can carry that down on the main deck and you can have that as open space or seating space. So lots of flexibility. This is a popular arrangement because you get a nice amount of seating. You get two wet bars, sink and refrigeration on this side, cooking over on this side, and still space forward for two proper stid helm seats, so you can get very comfortable, settle in for those longer journeys. This is standard, the hardtop. You can enclose it with covers, again, that comes as standard. And if you wanted a Sky Lounge version where it's fully enclosed, if you're willing to pay up, they would do that for you as well. But let's just have a little look back here, because this is a popular arrangement. It keeps the aft deck clear, keeps the tender up and out the way. You get the crane, the tender, the covers, everything, all as standard on the GB54. They really pack this thing out when it comes to the options, and a lot of stuff is standard fit. And then here, as I said, this is where you have your grill, twin grills on this boat, a bit more storage down here. It's a really strong, entertaining area. Let's head inside. Here's a nice example of some Grand Banks detailing. Here on the outside, all of the wood is gloss. This is all the same door frame. As we move inside, it really neatly transitions to satin, which we then see throughout the rest of the interior. Very subtle, but very, very nicely done. And this is a beautiful space. It is traditional, but it's incredibly warm and cozy, very welcoming, and so practical as well. Good example of that is this lovely handrail that runs almost the full length of this area. So if you're marooned in the middle of the saloon, the boat's swaying around, you can just quickly grab on. And while we're up here, this is where the television swings down from as well. Under these catches, down it comes, and it's well positioned for these seating areas here on either side. Now this boat has got a layout where you have the dinette here on the port side. This table opens up obviously to make it a bit bigger, and you've got L-shaped seating here on the starboard side. But there is an alternative arrangement where you have opposing benches and another table, and it's a really nice space. On the GB60 I tested, it had exactly that layout, and it works really well. It's great for breakfast, it's great for playing cards, having a drink. It's a bit more informal, right next to the window, and it works really, really well. And I talked about the different configurations you can have with this boat. Well, one option is to have the galley on the lower deck. You sacrifice a cabin, but that obviously gives you a lot more living space up here. But this galley up arrangement has been more popular, and I'm not surprised, because you gain a cabin, it means the galley isn't tucked downstairs. If you're on long passages, the galley is opposite the helms. If you want to quickly grab a drink or even make a sandwich, you can be on watch and be doing that. So I can see why this is so popular. You've got all your fridge space underneath the counter. You've got, you know, really good cooking appliances as well. It's a sort of home from home type galley, and people will spend a lot of time on these boats, so that sort of thing is very important. Into the helm then. Very, very comfortable helm bench. This is super soft, squishy leather. It's absolutely lovely, and I like the fact that you've got a split bolster, so if one person wants to stand and one person wants to sit, they can. They're not forced to do the same thing. Lots and lots of teak here, this lovely traditional wheel. It is all beautifully executed. And we talk about that sort of modern twist of Grand Banks and how Grand Banks has changed. This is a high performance cruising boat, it really is. You have it with IPS or shaft drives. The top speed is 33 knots with IPS, but for me the headline is, if you're travelling at 21 knots, this boat will do nearly 600 nautical miles. It's got such an efficient hull shape, it really can cruise a long distance at a decent lick. And if you bring that speed down, you're talking, you know, 1,000 odd nautical miles of range if you're willing to travel at displacement speed. So it brings great flexibility when it comes to this boat's cruising. Shall we have a look at the accommodation? Come on down into a world of teak. It really is lovely down here. You know, it's quite different these days to have this type of finish, but it just works so well on a Grand Banks. And because of the way they've engineered this boat, the layout of the machinery, as we'll go into when we go to the engine room in a moment, you don't get a full beam and midships cabin. You get two cabins. Obviously, back here you get two when you don't have the galley down here. But as it stands, this is a sort of single cabin down here with a study for the owner, and then you have a guest cabin over here. Now this one's set up as a small double, but you can have it with sliding twins if you prefer. Just gives you a bit more versatility, and that is connected directly to the day heads. If we move right forward, we find the owner's cabin, which has a nice big ensuite here on the port side when you come on in, and this is a really lovely space. Yes, it's tucked right forward, but floor space is still really very good. You've got big amounts of storage as well. You know, I've mentioned about the fact that this is a liveaboard style boat where the owner and their family may be on board for long stints, so having cabin storage is so important. And also being comfortable. If you're going to sleep on board for many, many nights, you want to be comfortable while you're doing it. So you've got this nice big bed that's not set too high, easy to get into. Small hull windows down here, you know, they're very small portholes, but you have got a decent skylight overhead at least, so you can get some natural ventilation and a bit of natural light coming down here as well. But those are not enormous, those portholes on either side. It's a very pleasant place to be though. Right, let's head to that machinery space. One thing I forgot to mention on the way in is that these windows drop down, as you can see, put my hands through, because these windows drop down either side, and actually the same thing happens over there as well. So you can get some natural ventilation in here if it's a cool enough day that you don't need to rely on air conditioning. Anyway, talk of air conditioning, onto the machinery space, and before we get to the engine room, we have to pop open this nice big hatch here in the deck. We are met with this lovely big lazarette. So let's jump down there. Well, headroom may be restricted overhead, but in terms of compromises, that's it down here. It is one of the most beautifully finished engine rooms I've ever been in. And yes, there isn't a huge amount of space on top of these engines, but inspecting them is very, very easy. And I talked about the shaft drive IPS option, and if you have IPS, this particular boat's on shafts, they mount those IPS on carbon fibre jack shafts to the IPS pod, so the engines can stay in exactly the same place, meaning whichever option you go for, the weight balance is exactly the same. There's no compromise depending on whether you want shaft drive or IPS. It's seriously impressive stuff. Before we wrap up though, let's head downstairs and take a look at the hull shape of the GB54. As much as employing IPS helps with efficiency on this model, a lot of it is down to what they call the V-warp hull design. What does that mean? Well, as we can see very helpfully on this stand here at Dusseldorf, it's got quite a shallow aft section here. What that means is it gets up onto the plane nice and easily, makes it very efficient up onto that planing speed, and then as we move forward, it gets very, very sharp. It's designed to slice through the water, and the lift created from that shallow aft end is what really digs that sharpest part of the hull through the water. So it shouldn't be slamming over the water like this, it should be pushing through it in a very efficient manner. And while we're down here, we can check out the fin stabilizers as well. If you've never seen what stabilizers look like, and I talk about them a lot on the channel, well, under the water, that's what they are. They're wiggling around, if the boat starts to roll, they'll counter that, and they do it at slow speed and they do it at high speed as well. There you go, fin stabilizers. Thanks very much for watching that tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a like. And if you like your Grand Banks content, we've actually got a full tour of the flagship Grand Banks 85. It is an extraordinary boat. I really encourage you to go and have a watch of that. I'll put that up there for you. If you want to watch some sea trials from some other manufacturers, I'll put a box down there. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can click up there. Thanks again for watching. I'm Jack Haines. This is YachtBuyer.